Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here and for such an amazing event. I will talk briefly about basically two topics. One macro genre, which is called interactive nonfiction, and one specific format, which is interactive documentary, that could fit into this big macro genre, which we call interactive nonfiction. I have to say that at any moment the bus could appear, so we have to quit the presentation and go and grab the bus. So it's more pressure for me. Yes, I'll do my best, but I will try to do as quick as possible. Okay? So my objective here is to study the interactive documentary as a starting point. And my idea is that we, using interactive documentary and interactive nonfiction, can create some kind of narrative that could be as appealing or more appealing than works of fiction. So to do that, I will define theoretical and practical elements in order to help the design, development and management of interactive and transmedia nonfiction works. So which is my focus in my research. And basically, after the excellent talk about interactive documentary done by William Urrutia this morning, I have to say, and it's not much to say, but there's a growth interest in interactive documentary, and then we have to create some kind of framework to understand this place or this space or room. And beside the initial experiments that were done in United States, in France in the early 90s, two main broadcasters, Arte and the National Film Board of Canada, has entered the field producing outstanding works. That you can see here a list of them, but there's another entities that enter to the field, to this formula, such as production companies and agencies, digital newspapers, and festivals and conferences. These are such a part of this new realm that is arising nowadays, but we have to add research labs, platforms and initiatives, interactive and transmedia markets, private funding, and indexes of projects. And this is only a partial state of the art, because as well we can consider NGOs, academia, labs, and museums have joined in. So we have more or less the scope. When I just started my research 7 years ago on interactive documentary, it took me 7 years to map the interactive documentary field, and it's not, of course, finished, my research about that. So what I try to put here and to introduce here is some mapping some trends, which were 10 when I just started my research, but for a question of basically focus and extension, I summarized into 4, which are the following ones. Number 1, the double hybridization and the impact on education. I really believe that basically we are facing a crossover between audiovisuals and interaction, and between information and entertainment. So if we cross over these fields, we can see that interactive documentary and interactive nonfiction, by extension, it's a vast new territory that has to be explored, and there's a lot of interactions here when we can fit, for example, journalism, essay, report, documentary, instructional and educational movies, etc. So it's a vast territory that I say again, it's very important to understand. And in addition, there's another field besides the mainstream, which is the field of education. Here we can find hybrid domains such as educational games, edutainment, etc. And as well, some processes that could be involved in this new movement as viewing, exploring, learning, and share. We're going to foresee in later some of these processes and combine them with modalities. In second trend, the mixture of formats and genres. I really believe that this will going to turn into some kind of transmedia meta-genre eventually, because it's like a container umbrella, and in which we can fit a lot of different formats or genre. It is not, to me, interactive documentary or interactive nonfiction considered as a genre or a macro genre yet, but this is still in a phase of, really, it's still early days, but it's coming very fast, and this is evolving as a new form. So number 3, it would be gamification and transmedia logics. Gamification is very clear, but we can see this trend by mixing documentary, nonfiction, and games. That seems a strategy that lots of producers are trying or consider to produce nowadays, because it places the interactor or the user at the center of the action and creating some kind of immersive and engaging scenario for the authors. So on the one hand, we have gamification, and we can see these trends, for example, in documentary games such as Format Money, such as Typewriter, which are outstanding projects in that kind of production, serious games, for example, Food for, Remission, etc., or even initiatives such as Games for Change, etc., are just trends in this new form or field. And on the other hand, we have transmedia logics, that you know, probably know, it's like to diverse the story of the narration between different platforms. So I think that nonfiction is a very suitable format for transmedia logics, because it's difficult to break the flow in cinema or interactive cinema. When we are talking about fiction, but it's more like you can stop the documentary, you can just jump, for example, to Wikipedia or to consult something, and you can come back to your piece, and you can, for example, revisit or rethink. I think that non-fiction could have a lead, because this has been very explored in transmedia, in fiction and transmedia, but not explored yet in transmedia and documentary or transmedia and non-fiction. This could be a transmedia, another field of force. And finally, and maybe my main contribution to this field, is design through modes and processes. I'm trying to develop some modes or models or guidelines to produce interactive and non-fiction interactive works. And basically here we have this, what we have seen till now. We have a map where we can map some transmedia, gamification, engagement, immersion, and interface, user experience, and usability things that are around this concept of interactive and transmedia documentary. And in addition, we can add here some kind of definition of interactive documentary, and I'm to represent, document, and interact with reality. But we need to consider just a set of techniques, which is called types of interaction and navigation, according to my research. And basically, I'm going to define briefly each of these categories. I mean, representation, navigation, and interaction. For example, modes of representation, according to Bill Nichols, could be poetic, expository, reflexive, art director's point of view or attitude to the world filmed. This could be the modes of representation, basically in audiovisual documentary. While in the second category, we'll have the navigation modes, different ways of browsing and penetrating. To me, to navigate is to visit, to move, to one point to another, while the other way around, it would be interaction. Interaction to me is another kind of interactivity in which you can trace or leave a trace in the system, and this could be like category C, modes of interaction, go a step further. And in this scenario, the receiver becomes in a sense an emitter. You can leave a mark or you can make a change in the system. To me, this is the basic difference between navigate and interact. So we established these three categories, these three modalities, and to this we add some process. To me, an interactive documentary allows the user to explore, to learn, and to share. For example, browsing, interacting, contributing, or etc. So, for example, you have here like this picture and this map. You can just confront, and it's a comparison between linear documentary and interactive documentary. So, besides interpreting what the movie is telling to you in a very other way that you can other things and reflect about things, you can play, understood as the playing with the interface, the possibilities that the interface gives to the user. You can learn in an actively way, I mean learning by doing, and you can share in real time. These four processes are unthinkable in traditional documentary. So to me, these are good forms. So I mixed up all these things and create some kind of draft that I presented here as a premiere, in a sense, not in the article, it's part of this. But for example, I divided this like four processes that you can see up, and then two levels. Design, where I explain modalities and how to use and combine them, and methodology, how to create documents and produce. So this would be the first, for example, process. This would be the second one. The second one process, according, for example, to reflect or to research from Sandra Gaudenzi, from Marie-Laure Ryan, from Carlos Scolari on the transmedia side. I create this map, and then the third one, which is learn knowledge, where I propose type of proposals that the students could do in order to use interactive documentary or interactive nonfiction. And finally, the share or the exchange. Types of exchange, it depends if there's a strong input or a weak input, and you can decide, and then you can create, according to this, the interactive documentary or interactive nonfiction work. So, conclusion. For briefly conclusions, extracting from my study, it's basically we are facing a transition era. In basically the term documentary lexicon is expanding. So we are just grabbing new actors in the field, but the business model is still weak. So it's still early days, and we need to consolidate a more strong business model. So this is on the one hand about how to create, and the business model has to be hand by hand by production as well, research. There's a few research on that field. We need more research. So I aim researchers to do things in that respect. And basically, using interactive nonfiction, we can include elements basically that complement, enrich, and expand the viewer or user overall experience. So, according and summing up all the information, to me, interactive documentary and so far interactive nonfiction propose a challenge. It could encourage, motivate, and stimulate, provides data to make decisions, inform, complement, and experiment, and forces the brain to retain the data and to connect knowledge. So, it's the three processes that I described briefly. So I want to finish up my presentation because I'm on time. I went very quickly, I know, it's too much information. I'm so sorry, you are very tired, but my idea is that give some rhythm to this, because if don't, you get bored and you will sleep as soon as possible. So I will finish up saying that it's such a pleasure to be here, and it's a miracle that I am here, because basically there's good news, which is my wife is pregnant. There's more good news, we're expecting twins. And there's bad news. So it's 8 months, so at any time my wife could call me, and then I will have to pick up the taxi, the airport, come back to Barcelona as the bus, the same idea. And then my wife is in the hospital saying, I'm ready to go. So thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much for being here when there's such a very much more important thing happening elsewhere. So